It just got real, folks. Let's see what UCLA's life in the Big Ten is really going to look like here on Locked On UCLA.
You are Locked On UCLA, your daily podcast on the UCLA Bruins. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, back to the Locked On UCLA podcast. I'm your host, Zach Anderson-Yoxsimer. Thanks for making this your first listen each and every day. It's free wherever you get your podcast, and it's available on YouTube. So like, comment, and subscribe. Become an everyday listener. I know we're going on a little bit of a shorter, more condensed schedule in the month of June, but still become an everyday listener. Go back, listen to old episodes, and join the fun. UCLA, they're going to have a lot of fun, but you will have a lot of fun if you get Birddogs. Today's episode is brought to you by Birddogs. Go to birddogs.com/lockedoncollege and enter the promo code LockedOnCollege. You can get free custom Birddogs Eddie-Stein tumblers with every order. For UCLA football, we've been waiting, and all of UCLA sports as a whole, but specifically for the football team, we were wondering what this would look like in their transition into the Big Ten, where, hey, who are their opponents from now until the future? While we know in 2024, around this time, the move will be officially made from the Pac-12 to the Big Ten, and then UCLA will eventually be officially out of the Pac-12 in life. While everything has been changing across the landscape of college football, it will officially be altered once the Bruins and the Trojans, hand in hand, I guess, go across the country and significantly add on to their air mileage for the year. So let's take a look at what UCLA's 2024 and 2025 opponents look like for their conference schedule. Yes, it's weird saying conference schedule, and then you hear the names like Ohio State and Michigan in the same breath. Conference rivals, Ohio State and Michigan and USC, and those are all still in the same conference. It still hasn't hit me. It has, obviously. It's been close to a year. I forget when the day was, or closer to a year since the news dropped. But here we are looking to figure out what it is. So in 2024, I think that's honestly one of the more intriguing schedules in terms of name brand opponents the Bruins may have ever played in their program's history. I'm not going to go and debate that right now and go year by year. But here we are looking at what they have. So, all right, 2024, this is who their three non-conference opponents are. Let's just take a look. They're at Hawaii at the end of August. Going to Hawaii, well, hey, I've got friends who can't go to Hawaii because they might get in trouble with their families if they ditched and go to Hawaii. So, that could be the in trouble trip, enjoying the UCLA football team playing at Hawaii. They host Fresno State, and then before all the Big Ten fun, they still go to LSU against a Tiger team in the SEC and one of the better environments still to come in the country. So now the Big Ten conference schedule looks like this. Not in order, but just by road to home environments. They go to Indiana. All right. They go to Iowa, which is supposed to be one of the more intriguing, entertaining venues across the country. You've got Rutgers. All right. You got Rutgers. They go across the country. UCLA had to do that early, probably. And then they go to Michigan. So that will be an entertaining trip. You got Hawaii to choose from, Michigan, and LSU for 3 road games. And hey, the fourth best maybe is Iowa. I'm going to tell you Hawaii Stadium is not up to standard at the moment. It's just the trip to Hawaii. But in terms of the 3 football atmospheres, LSU, Michigan, Iowa, you can't get anything better than those 3 things. Oh, by the way, you've got some pretty big teams coming home as well. Minnesota, Nebraska, Northwestern, Ohio State, and USC all at home. So within a year plus, a year and a half from now, you're going to have an absolutely packed out Rose Bowl. You're not going to have to deal with empty stadiums because those crazy Nebraska fans, and as endearing as I can get, they will fill out that stadium. Ohio State will come mob the stadium. I'm expecting the Golden Gophers to come fill up. USC, well, we already know what that means in 2024. But if you look at that schedule, man, that's a pretty stacked schedule for UCLA to be dealing with in the first year. As a fan's perspective, as an enthusiast, is everybody going to maybe go and visit all these venues? you probably don't have enough money to shell out going to 30 different places like this year by year. I know maybe going to an Arizona and all that can be fun from time to time, and not to shout out in Arizona, Tucson, Tempe, all the other Pac-12 schools, not trying to say they're a dime a dozen, but it's a little different when you get LSU, Hawaii, Iowa, and Michigan all as road games next year. That's pretty entertaining from a fan's perspective. Now, will they be good enough to compete? I'm not sure what LSU will look like next year. I'm not entirely sure how Michigan and Ohio State will look like from a year-to-year basis. Who knows? Maybe things change at UCLA from a coaching perspective or from a roster perspective, if there's an overhaul in the better or for the worse. But just simply looking at the schedule, I'm excited and entertained and ready to see what that life looks like in the Big Ten. 2025, they also released that too. So let's take a quick look at UCLA's 2025 football opponents. If you've already forgotten, you got Georgia at home in late August. You've got UNLV on the road. So if people want to go to Vegas, they can go to Vegas. You host New Mexico. Remember, they only have these 2 years of FCS opponents because the Michigan series got backed out. And then in 2025, you go to Illinois, you go to Michigan State, you go to Nebraska, and you go to Penn State, and then technically SC is a Big Ten road opponent. So that first year in the Big Ten, you've got 4 road games in conference. The next year, they've got 5, including the SC game. They go to Illinois, so they get a bit of a shorter trip going to Champaign. I drove through Champaign pretty recently. I wasn't impressed. Either way, you go to East Lansing when it comes to Michigan State. Nebraska, the Bruins were recently there in the last just decade or so, and that was a pretty entertaining environment, entertaining, emotional game. And then you got Penn State, which for all intents and purposes, a ridiculous, crazy atmosphere. And if they do a whiteout or whatever crazy fan turnout they're going to get, it'll be a lot of craziness in Happy Valley. So then at home, they get Maryland, Purdue, Rutgers, and Wisconsin. So in terms of a home schedule, 2024 will be extremely awesome. And then 2024's road schedule is equally as fun. So we should see a lot of blue and gold on the road and especially at home for the Bruins. Now that 2025 schedule, while it may not be as stacked in terms of eye-popping, the eye test, think about this moving forward. That would potentially be, this is best case scenario, everything works out. Say Dante Moore turns into a star. 2023 looking good. 2024, it's looking good if he either is redshirting and then plays, doesn't have to play with the transfer portal. Nobody drops a big bag of NIL money, quote unquote, all those endorsements. Bruins keep him in for a third year of schooling. Playing Georgia and then this Big Ten schedule, while Nebraska might have a new coach, you wonder how they'll be built. I'm not sure how Penn State will be, but you miss Michigan and you miss Ohio State in 2025. You get Maryland, Purdue, Rutgers, and Wisconsin at home. I'm thinking 2025 could be a building to a dream year, right? You've got this last year in the Pac-12. You got all these different things and intangibles working for and against you in terms of the scheduling, a lot of newcomers, a lot of transfers, Chip Kelly trying to overhaul different things on both sides of the ball for better and for worse, whatever it may be. 2024, I'm not saying I'm not hyped, I'm not excited, but in terms of a competitive team initially, we'll have to find out. In 2025, while there might be less fans in the stands because of just looking at the name brand value, depending on how good the teams are that year, the Bruins might actually be good and set up for a dream season, especially with the expanded playoff coming. So that could be a year where the Bruins get in and do something crazy. Am I nuts for saying in 2.5 years the Bruins will be playing in a college football playoff up to 12 teams, and if they don't expand it to 16 or something wild within then, those are all debates we can have. Go back and forth and talk about this. Yet here we are looking deeper and deeper. 2024, that will be fun just in terms of going to games and seeing who's coming to town. 2025, that's the year I'm wanting UCLA to compete. And from what I've seen, they haven't really decided what the divisions will look like in the Big Ten. But again, each member institution will continue to play 9 intra-conference games per season, and teams will play every other conference opponent at least twice, once home and once away within a 4-year period, which is why you see Michigan and Ohio State year 1, you don't see them year 2, and they'll flip that and rotate that in year 3 and do the same for the 2025 opponents when they eventually figure out who is a rival and decide which team is your permanent rival moving forward to make that easier on scheduling. This is recent news, just dropped, so let's get excited for UCLA football. But we're going to transition into UCLA basketball. And is Adem Bona one of the top candidates to break out? It's been talked about recently. We'll tell you more. But first, I'm going to tell you about Birddogs because, hey, Birddogs are the most comfortable shorts I've worn. Regardless as if people are just knocking on your style or saying, hey, are you a comfort guy or are you a style guy? With Birddogs, you don't have to choose one or the other. You've got flashy colors. If you're trying to impress everybody going on a date, say, look at these. I got Birddog shorts. I'm sweating in the summer. Birddogs, you don't even know if you're sweating. You're just sitting there comfy. You're like, am I floating on clouds or am I walking in shorts? Good pockets. You can adjust the size in terms of the little strap in front. They're very comfy. Order them today. Go to birddogs.com/lockedoncollege. Enter the promo code LockedOnCollege. You can get a free Yeti-style tumbler with your order. Again, that's birddogs.com/LockedOnCollege. And get all that. That's something you don't want to miss with Birddogs. Cruising on with Locked On UCLA, Zach Anderson-Yoxsimer with you guys. Yes, I know it was a little bit long since I had an episode. Sorry about that. Been a little bit busy, as I said. A couple weeks ago, I explained what I'm doing. Not going to get into that now because we need to tell you why Adem Bona has been getting hyped. Even our sister channel here in the Locked On family networks, Locked On podcast networks, you have Adem Bona getting hyped up by the Locked On College Basketball podcast. I believe it was either a CBS Sports article or someone recently, even an aggregated article from Bruin Report Online, which was talking about why Adem Bona is a breakout candidate for UCLA next year, which is why we're all excited that he's going to come back for another year, his sophomore year, and become what is maybe a very lucrative prospect in the 2024 NBA draft. He's a guy that, in my humble opinion, just wasn't ready. He didn't average a double-double, and that seems to be a minimum, despite the potential and the athleticism, a lingering shoulder injury coming off the surgery for the labrum tear in his shoulder after he dove after a loose ball against Oregon. So many different things factoring against him. He proved he was good, but there's so many different factors, in not a bad way, but ways he can tweak his game and become immensely more important to the 2024 draft. And while UCLA is still in the works of finalizing in the recruitment process of Adem Bona, they've already got a good post prospect in Bona coming back. The reigning freshman of the year for the Pac-12 conference, we can't forget. Yeah, Amari Bailey got the spotlight in March because he hit a big shot and averaged 17 points per game over the last 3 or 4 weeks or so, from the conference tournament to the NCAA tournament. But Bona was the one who was in there night in and night out outside of night one and the last couple of games, where he grinded through, showed heart, hustle, poise on the court. The only problem was keeping him on the floor because of foul problems, turning him into an offensive weapon. The Bruins didn't fully utilize him. He didn't have the footwork and the offensive ability to truly become someone that was a dominant basketball player, I think, at the NBA at this stage. But I'm still excited because the college game, he can still be dominant. I remember he did an interview with Bruin Report Online, and what he kind of explained in that interview was how when he was in high school, and this is what happens with a lot of high school kids, right? They're 6'4", and while in the NBA, 6'4" is a small guard, a decent guard in college. At 6'4", you could be a post player at high school and be bigger than everybody else and have no hand-eye coordination to shoot like Steph Curry. Now at the college NBA level, Adem Bona, while he's not going to be asked to do 6'10" crazy Nikola Jokic type things or any type of crazy shooting from downtown unless he develops that, he does need more of a dynamic offensive game where he gets the ball in the paint and can score. Because remember, Purdue's returning Zach Edey. You've got Colorado returning Tristan Da Silva. They've got all these players listed on a top 10 list of breakout stars, and Bona is there. Defense, we know he's got it. It's just got stay out of foul trouble. Rebounding, he needs to be more dominant rebounder. And while there were some times he grabbed some big, kind of strong big man boards, he has to at least average double figures when it comes to rebounding the basketball. Otherwise, he's not going to get taken seriously by scouts, in my opinion, going into 2024. And then developing some touch, whether it be some touch floating the ball, some footwork like a Hawkes stepping through with the layup, or just simply muscling his way through traffic. Those are ways Bona can be a breakout star. And the numbers to prove it would be a double-double. And not one of those nasty 10 and 10 on 20 shots and getting, flat-footed boards. We're talking someone who's shooting 70% from the field, which we know Bona can do simply because he'll get easy touches near the basket, where the Bruins have to work on those entry passes with a lot of newcomers in the backcourt. But Bona can bring that defensive presence, maybe as a 4 if Mara is the 5, but play offensively as the 5, as maybe Mara, who's not officially a Bruin yet, could stretch the floor as that hybrid 4 prospect offensively, as the Bruins shift things depending on if they get the Spanish product or if Bona has to play the 5 both offensively and defensively. Either way, the Bruins season, you don't want to say hinges necessarily on a Bona breakout, but they're going to be dominant. They do need backcourt help, and the player returning at Adem Bona is significant to their success in 2023 into 2024, which is why the Bruins need him to step up as a leader. Not that he wasn't or anything. He showed it with his character and his poise on the floor, but taking that next step, developing, getting healthy, which he should be by the season. All intents and purposes, he will be on the court. Unlike if Jalen Clark had come back, he would not have been ready from the start of the season, if not the first 2+ months of the season. That's why Bona is a valuable piece returning, and he could break out, be one of those guys that the Bruins use potentially with 2 big post players running up and down the floor. They weren't necessarily big last year. This year, the Bruins could all of a sudden have a 6'10" 4/5 with Mara, 7'3" center running up and down the floor. And then you've got Stefanovic, 6'7". You've got, Fibleud. You've got different guys with different sizes, long wingspans, like Jalen Clark used to his advantage to become a good defender. The good is an understatement, a good national defensive player of the year. The Bruins are set up for success, but Bona is a key piece, and he can break out. That's why you'll see all these lists, me talking about it, other Locked On podcasts talking about it, a lot of people writing different sites. They're going to write about this maybe closer to the season, but Bona is a guy that is an integral part to UCLA being successful. Going to cruise on into Locked On UCLA, third and final segment here for the Bruins. What do I think of the 2022 to 2023 athletic year as a whole? It's an interesting year, right? You had UCLA, who won a national championship. Hey, we can't forget women's soccer way back when they had the crazy comeback, 2 goals in the final, I believe, 5 minutes, one literally at the death of the match to tie it, send it to overtime, and then eventually win in the closing moments there with the heart and hustle in front of a packed crowd, I believe against North Carolina. They had Marguerite Eozasa, who came in a first-year head coach, winning a national championship. You had the excitement of UCLA football through the beginning of the year, one to maybe fade off at the end, but still a successful campaign. You had the big recruit, arguably the biggest recruit UCLA football's ever gotten. The excitement of men's basketball, women's basketball knocked off Stanford, got to a Sweet 16, almost beat number 1 South Carolina on the road in a tough environment, competitive in just about every game until they lost that final game in the tournament. Softball was rather dominant for most of the regular season until the tournament. You had lots of good things to build, and while beach volleyball fell a little short, you had men's volleyball in the title and win it. So we had a couple of national championships in team sports. You had different programs doing good. Last year, a little bit differently, looking at the 21 to 22 season. In retrospect, right, you had UCLA basketball that had a lot of expectations, fell short. This year, it was softball that had all those expectations building in the postseason. They fell short. But you can't hate when you had 3 teams in national finals at the top of my head. You've got a couple of teams winning national championships. And I would say UCLA women's basketball played above their heads considering all the youth they had. So you can go up and down, pick your poison or, pick your team and see the success they had. Considering the news already happened in between seasons, between 22 and 23 of moving to the Big Ten, you just wondered how the Bruins would play in the second to last year. I see a lot of growth in certain programs. Football, showcasing a lot of upward trajectory. UCLA softball, yes, heartbroken that they didn't get the job done this year. They showed some growth, moving forward, moving upward, hitting the portal. As Kelly Inouye Perez says, hey, I'm going to go get the best players, even if they're in our own conference, while also getting some of the best recruits in the country. and maybe an injury or two and an ill-timed base hit, a lack of a clutch base hit, and maybe they could still be playing. That's not the case, but despite talent potentially moving on, they're set up for the future. I'm not sure what UCLA baseball will look like. We can dive into all these things moving forward, but basketball, it's a shift. It's a transition for sure. Moving out of these extra COVID years into the NIL era, Mick Cronin has been on record saying, we're going to be paying players sooner rather than later, and sooner is here and now, and he's going overseas to get players. He's got his first complete roster overhaul, in my mind, in his tenure. Yes, losing a Juzang, losing key pieces here and there, Jules Bernard, now turning that into Jaime Jaquez Jr., a Tiger Campbell, a one-year piece in Amari Bailey. You can add and pick and choose pieces here and there that I'm forgetting. They're in a transitionary period. Beyond just the Big Ten, this is an important couple of years for men's basketball and Mick Cronin to show, hey, I got my first few years, right? Got my first recruits, even took some from the last regime, got them to some heights. Now how does he turn it over and do it consistently to what we hope eventually ends the national championship drought as it continues to extend into the near 3 decade mark as we get closer and closer to 2025. Women's basketball, the future is bright. Corey Close continues to show her expertise in recruiting, and a wide open women's basketball year next year might mean the Bruins could be amongst the top 10, if not top 5 teams in the country. Maybe they can do something special. And Joss Barra, amazing. National championship women's soccer. We'd love to see them succeed again next year. But a couple of national championships, a lot of programs growing. To my mind, not a lot of negativity in certain aspects, not a crazy publicity stunt from what I've seen in different things. So you'd have to be pretty proud as a UCLA fan going in this miniature in-depth, miniature overlook of what the 2022 to 2023 athletic season looks like. So can't be, a team that says, let's win national championships, got a pair of those, got some rings, went to a national final, is putting themselves in the right direction to compete at the next level, some might say, in college athletics, competing in the next wave of what college athletics looks like. And even I know, you don't know at home watching or listening what that is. We know they're destined to the Big Ten. I read off their football opponents and where I'd be excited to go watch a football game, win or lose. I hope. I don't know what the fan bases are at those places, but either way, the future is here. Close. It's pretty close. And it is exciting. So UCLA fans, become an everyday listener. We'll have more Locked On UCLA content when we return, which will be pretty soon. We'll have an episode up on Friday. Hands up, Bruins fans. Zach Anderson-Yoxsimer signing off. 8 clap time, baby. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. UCLA. UCLA. Fight, fight, fight. This has been Locked On UCLA. Go Bruins.